This story is about an orphanage that raises its children exceptionally well. The girl you see crying is upset because her brother is about to leave with a new father who just arrived here. You might be wondering why this man doesn't fit the typical image of a parent you had imagined. Well, it is because these kids receive special education, so it only makes sense that only special parents can take them under their wing. You might also be curious about what kind of special education these seemingly ordinary kids are getting. Well, you'll get your answer soon enough. As soon as the sister tells the kids to stop pretending and get ready for training with a single clap, they pull out sharp blades and weapons, which are definitely not toys for poking around. The sister even tells the little girl not to let her snot dangle out of her nose while pretending to cry because it looks gross, and she doesn't want the new parents to get a bad impression of the kids they've raised so dearly. The girl quickly complies and shoots the snot out of her nose immediately. We also meet the proud director of the orphanage, who takes major pride in this special education approach. He sees it as a real gift for these kids because they've been trained as living, breathing weapons ever since they learned how to walk. These kids are raised with super strict supervision to make sure they meet the standards of the filthy rich. Because of this crazy attention to detail, it costs a fortune to train each child properly. Another question that might come up in your mind is what these kids are actually used for. Well, there isn't any straightforward answer to this question, and the director just says they're like computers, and what they're used for is decided by the buyers, or as you might call them, the new parents. For example, this rich fat blob of a human being who has just adopted a new kid shows his new son a photo of a man and says, "This is your target, memorize his face." The director then explains that since these kids are living weapons, they pose a significant threat to the buyer, so the orphanage made sure to drill each and every one with 3 absolute principles from a young age, as a form of safety measure. These are the rules they can't disobey because they have been wired into their subconscious minds, and the orphanage calls these the 3 absolute principles. The director repeats how important these 3 principles were, as they would allow the buyers to control the children, making them crucial to remember. Back to the car, while the fat guy is drilling the boy about memorizing the photo, the kid points out that there's a car tailing them closely. The old man is a bit startled to hear something he never asked, so he starts yelling at the kid, demanding to know what the heck he's talking about and telling him to just focus on memorizing the damn picture. The kid quickly snaps back to attention and swears to follow the orders. And there you go, that's what the first principle is all about: absolute compliance with the parents' orders. That car tailing them smashes into them, and their car flips over from the impact. The kid scrambles out and sees his father badly hurt and barely clinging to life. And that is when we learn about the second principle these kids are drilled with: they cannot use their powers without the parents' permission. As the kid checks whether his father is still alive by checking his pulse, the attackers get out of their cars with their guns and rifles in hand. As they cautiously approach the flipped car, they spot the kid crying and begging for help, shouting that his dad isn't breathing. The attackers are taken aback to see this because they weren't told that there was a kid in the car. They decide to dump the kid somewhere to finish up the work, but as one of them approaches the injured boy to help, the boy whips out a knife and stabs him right in the throat, making him bleed like crazy. He then quickly snatches the gun from the fallen enemy. Before the other hitman even realizes what's happening, he sees the kid aiming the gun at him while using his buddy as a body shield and gets a bullet right in the head, ending him with a single shot. And that's what the third rule is all about: forget the first 2 principles and do whatever it takes to keep your parents safe. The director, on the other hand, couldn't be prouder of his children. He is practically bursting with joy and pride for raising such perfect, exceptional kids. He quickly shows the register book containing information about each and every kid and asks his buyer which one he would prefer. But the buyer chooses one of the kids that the director knew was not possible for them to sell, so the old man puts the register book back in the drawer and reluctantly pulls out a file for that kid who's already been deemed a defective product. He's disappointed that the buyer is only interested in this particular one. Apparently, this misfit kid was a real gem. Even the director is a huge fan of his. He had the best skills out of all the weapons they'd whipped up, a true elite, and the old man was practically swooning over him. But of course, they had lost him, or rather, the kid had disappeared, and the director's left wondering if he's even still breathing. They've tried tracking him down, but since he's parentless, he can't use his powers without someone's permission, so they're pretty much in the dark because of 0 leads. The director could only assume he's probably living incognito as just another regular high school kid, or might even be dead. Well, it seems like this supposed true elite is getting pushed around by a bunch of school bullies. After taking a punch from a guy in a white hoodie, he's down for the count, writhing in agony from that one brutal hit. Guess being a top-tier weapon doesn't always mean you can handle a schoolyard smackdown. This guy, Joseph, with deadpan eyes, hovers over our boy, asking him how many points he'd give that punch. The poor guy fumbles out, that's a solid 15 points right there. The other bullies in the group high-five Joseph for racking up such a high punching score. Joseph then decides he wants to play further, planning to test his kick to see how many points he can score this time. But before he can walk to our boy, Yun-ho, once again, a blonde dude pushes this blockhead away and rushes up to Yun-ho, eager to know how many points his punch can earn. Joseph doesn't appreciate getting pushed by some lowly weirdo, hiding his anger as he wipes the spot that the blondie had touched earlier on, and even Yun-ho can tell Joseph is pissed about the blonde's shove. So Joseph silently strolls over to the riled-up blondie, who was being made fun of by the other bullies because Yun-ho wouldn't give him a proper score. When Joseph gets there, he gives him a good old slap across the face, casually warning him, "Don't act so cocky, I was hitting him already, you understand right?" As much as Sheehan hates the humiliation of that slap, he swallows his pride and gives a thumbs up to his friend, giving his slap a solid 150,000 points, which he expected from someone who studied overseas. The guy with the deadpan eyes just smiles and casually walks away, telling Sheehan to go and buy some cigarettes for later. As Joseph and the other bullies leave, Sheehan promises to challenge him one day, promising to fight him next time and even making fun of his American accent. Meanwhile, the protagonist is totally fed up with all this nonsense from these ragtag idiots because he knows he could take them all down in one fell swoop. Still, he plays the role of the dumb weakling, and Sheehan starts choking him, demanding to know if Joseph's punch is actually better than his. Sheehan keeps on bullying our boy, treating him like his personal punching bag to vent his frustration, and tells Yun-ho to tag along with him for a little while. With no way out, the boy reluctantly follows the rowdy thug and ends up footing the bill for their meal. Because, well, Sheehan claims he's broke, saying he's all out of cash after running errands for Joseph. Blondie then wonders aloud who would win if he fought Joseph head-on. In response, Yun-ho states that he can't say anything for sure. Out of nowhere, Sheehan notices the snack shop has the same name as Yun-ho, and our guy sheepishly admits it's run by his mom. Right on cue, his mother also shows up and says if Sheehan is her son's friend, he can eat as much as he wants and eat some fish cakes as well. Sheehan is genuinely surprised to learn that this is actually Yun-ho's mother's shop, and our boy feels pretty disappointed because he had been trying to keep this a secret all along. He's not sure why his truth had to come out at the hands of this jerk who's shamelessly running his tongue over his lips, probably looking forward to freeloading some more food. Seeing the shifty look on his filthy friend's face, Yun-ho grabs his pen, ready to poke a hole in Sheehan's eyes if he tries anything sneaky to his mother. Just as he's about to make his move, the blondie surprises him by apologizing to his mother for not introducing himself properly earlier. He introduces himself as Sheehan Park, Yun-ho's buddy, and comments that he finally gets why the shop had a unique name. Yun-ho's mom chuckles at the joke and mentions that Yun-ho told her to not make it so obvious. Sheehan then jabs at Yun-ho, saying that it's not good to hide such things when his mother works so hard for him. Yun-ho, now totally over this guy's act, knows Sheehan's just a piece of shit. To avoid any more nonsense, he tells his mom they needed to get going because they had other friends waiting for them. The mother packs up some food in a plastic bag and hands it to Sheehan, telling him to share it with others. She explicitly and happily states that all Yun-ho's friends are like her own children, so Sheehan should not shy away from anything. While Yun-ho tries to convince her that it's really not necessary, the blondie's eyes light up at the sight of free food. He grabs it without a second thought, completely ignoring Yun-ho's internal pain. He's feeling pretty pathetic, internally begging his mom to rethink this because he knows these guys are just a bunch of bullies, not real friends. Yun-ho then pleads with Sheehan not to tell Joseph or anyone else about his mother's shop. Sheehan agrees with a smirk and says his goodbyes. Yun-ho's mom, ever the gracious host, tells Sheehan to bring more friends next time, to which Sheehan enthusiastically agrees, saying he'll definitely come back with a crew. Well, that's exactly what Yun-ho was trying to avoid, and here we are. Once Sheehan's out of sight, the boy turns to his mom and lets loose. While fighting to keep his tears in check, he furiously demands to know why she didn't just pretend they weren't related. Seeing her son so upset, his mom is totally confused and hurt. She tells him she was just happy to meet his friend and apologizes if she caused any trouble. Yun-ho, meanwhile, is left questioning the rationality behind his words. He has no idea why he's yelling at his mom, especially when she's apologizing. He's feeling like garbage for acting out. His mom tries to explain that she just wanted him to make more friends, which is why she acted the way she did. Yun-ho's hand shakes with frustration and confusion, and he's barely holding himself together. The next day at school, Yun-ho sees the same tteokbokki his mom makes sitting right before his eyes. Apparently, Joseph has figured out that Yun-ho's mom runs that snack shop down the street, so he grabbed a bowl for himself. Joseph takes a dirty rag, dips it into his bowl of tteokbokki, and starts rubbing it in Yun-ho's face, complaining that he found this rag in his food and demands a refund because he can't eat filth. To make matters worse, he tosses another jab, sarcastically asking if he should go directly to Yun-ho's mom for the refund. Yun-ho is absolutely livid with Shion, especially after he ratted out his secret despite his pleas to keep it quiet. Trying to keep his cool, Yun-ho responds coldly, asking if they're even considered friends. This gets under Joseph's skin, and he mocks Yun-ho for throwing a tantrum over a little joke. Then, to add insult to injury, Joseph dumps the entire bowl of tteokbokki right onto Yun-ho's uniform. That's the last straw. Yun-ho already has his pen in hand, and before Joseph can react, he doesn't hesitate to swing his hand to jab the pen straight into Joseph's throat. But then the image of his mother, trembling and telling him that she just wanted him to get along with his friends, came into his mind, causing his hand to stop inches away from Joseph's throat, trembling as he fights to keep himself in check. Joseph, not exactly thrilled about being threatened, gets more cocky and pissed off, demanding to know what the hell Yun-ho thinks he's doing. A few moments later, Shion strolls into the classroom, only to find everyone dead silent. The place is a mess. The police are on the scene, the window has been shattered, blood is splattered across the floor, and Yun-ho's glasses are scattered on the ground. Looks like things have taken a serious turn, either an accident or, dare I say, an attempt at murder by Joseph. You see, just a moment ago, Yun-ho was mercilessly beaten by this jerk for about 15 minutes straight. He begged for mercy, draped in his own blood, and lost consciousness several times while writhing in pain. Despite his pleas, Joseph didn't stop and continued the relentless beating. When Yun-ho was completely worn out and shattered from the brutal assault, he looked outside through the nearby window and finally ended it by jumping out of it. Now, we find ourselves in an abandoned building where we encounter this disgusting creature again. With no shred of empathy, he casually puffs on his cigarette and tells his friends to confess that they were the ones who accidentally pushed Yun-ho out of the window while playing around. His friends are pretty reluctant to take the blame. In fact, they refuse right away, telling Joseph they don't want to get into trouble. That's when Joseph brings up a useful Korean law known as the juvenile offender law. He explains that he's no longer eligible for this because he's past the age limit, so he's asking his friends to help him out by confessing that they were the ones who pushed Yun-ho out of the window. He insists that this is the only way he can avoid a trip to jail. Still, the other boys are hesitant and remind him that even if they take the blame, they can still be sued for damages. Joseph just shrugs it off, saying he's got that covered too. He then points out that the civil lawsuit hasn't been filed yet, and if they eliminate Yun-ho's only surviving family member, his mother, there will be no one left to file the lawsuit. Joseph also brings a suitcase full of hard cash, offering 10 million won per person in exchange for their help. Once everything's figured out, they decide to pay a visit that night to the grieving mother, who's still trying to cope with the loss of her son. She's sitting in her son's room, surrounded by his things, lost in her grief. As midnight strikes, the thugs quickly put on their masks and head straight for the 5th floor. But when they try to use the elevator, they find it's out of order, so they opt for the traditional staircase. As they make their way up, they discover that the elevator is jammed because someone has intentionally wedged it with a fire extinguisher, preventing it from coming back down. Before Joseph can even figure out who might have done this, they hear a familiar voice, asking them why they were so late. Apparently, Shion is sitting on the staircase, already waiting for them to arrive. Joseph quickly asks what the hell he's doing there, while the other lackey is just thrilled to see him and tells him to join them. Shion gets up from his seat, ready to dive into action, but not before asking 2 important questions. First, he wants to know how they found out about Yun-ho's snack shop, which was a secret spot only he knew about. Joseph casually pulls down his mask and explains that when Shion didn't bring the cigarettes he was supposed to, Joseph followed him and saw him hanging out with the neighborhood kids and eating. That's when he spotted Yun-ho arguing with his mother. Shion realizes that it was actually because of him that these thugs found out about the place. He then moves on to his second question and tells Joseph to think carefully before answering. He wants to know what they were doing here. That's when Joseph flexes his big iron pipe and tells Shion they're just here to handle things with Yun-ho's mother to keep her from filing a lawsuit and let her sleep peacefully. He's actually glad Shion's here too because he's been getting on his nerves lately. Joseph reminds him about the push from earlier and figures out that Sheehan was just pretending to bully Yun-ho, and in reality, he was trying to protect him the whole time. Joseph admits he was too dense to see it sooner and was itching to take care of Sheehan as well. With that, Sheehan is done with the interrogation. He picks up the fire extinguisher, and Joseph doesn't hesitate to swing his giant rod. Sheehan quickly pulls the pin from the extinguisher, aims it at Joseph, and starts blasting him with all the bubbly gas. As their vision blurs, one of the lackeys catches a glimpse of an extinguisher heading straight for his face. Before he knows it, the red tank smacks him right on the noggin, and the impact also sends Joseph sprawling to the ground too. Joseph quickly shoves his buddy off, grabs the rod again, while Sheehan handles the other two lackeys. When he sees Joseph making a move, he blocks the iron rod with the extinguisher like a pro. In a flash, he ducks down and slams the extinguisher onto Joseph's feet, smashing his toes into oblivion. Sheehan then boots him over the stairs, sending him tumbling backward as he shouts in pain that his toes were broken. He then starts trolling down the stairs while casually informing Joseph that his cuneiform bone above the metatarsal is broken, and he's pretty sure this arrogant bastard won't be walking anytime soon with those messed up foot. The filthy man groans in pain, lying defenseless on the ground, and shakily asks why Sheehan is doing this to him. That's when Sheehan drops the bombshell. He explains that there are 3 principles that were drilled into his mind as a kid. First, a parent's word is absolute. Second, don't use violence without permission. As he says this, he lands a devastating punch right on the guy's head. The other lackeys on the ground are totally lost, not understanding a word of this crazy rant. It's pretty wild that we were led to think Yun-ho, the whiny kid with glasses, was the main character. Turns out Sheehan is actually the missing kid from the orphanage. After losing several teeth and with a broken nose, Joseph begs for forgiveness and pleads for Sheehan to stop, but our boy keeps going, explaining that the third principle is if there's a threat to the parent's safety, the kid can ignore the first 2 rules and handle the situation however necessary to keep the parents safe. Sheehan remembers Yun-ho's mother saying that all of Yun-ho's friends are like her own children, so basically, she's his mother now, and if anyone threatens his mother, he's got the green light to beat them to a pulp. With a resounding bang, Sheehan smashes that filthy bastard's skull, and the sound echoes through the building. Back at the dead mansion, the sister informs the director that there was a call for him from Korea. He wonders who it was, so the sister tells him that it was from the White Tiger workforce. Hearing that name, the director immediately takes the phone away from her. Back in Korea, the White Tiger workforce informs the director that they had found him. The lost legend of Dead Mansion, codenamed Sean, is in Korea. Sean was one of the children created by the Dead Mansion project. He was the pinnacle of their product they had produced so far. He was top-notch in infiltration, weapon skills, and assassination. As a product, he was on a completely different level in all sense. Sean was meant to be sold to a top client of the Orphanage, a notorious Yakuza organization in Japan. But there was a mix-up in the delivery, and instead of Japan, he ended up in Korea. We could see a kid version of Sean asking for help in Japanese while being in Korea. The director recalls that it's been 5 years since that mishap, and he had almost thought Sean was dead, so they gave up on him. But now, this guy who looks more like a filthy rich mafia boss than a father is thrilled they found him. He quickly tells the sister to bring Sean back as soon as possible by any means necessary because he can't wait any longer. The woman, whom we've been calling sister, lets down her black veil, revealing her dead eyes and huge scar on her forehead. She quickly adheres to the order, saying she will proceed with the retrieval operation immediately. This lady in question goes by the name Rachel. As soon as she drops her act as sister, my god, this woman looks absolutely creepy, dressed in a tight, black, shiny suit. She's not holding back a single bit in flexing her big guns. She makes it clear that she will drag Sean back, even if she has to take him out by force. This woman is the Dead Mansion instructor, and her specialty is still unknown. However, the director quickly tells her to chill because he needs Sean unharmed, and she doesn't need those guns either. The lady quickly gets embarrassed and starts picking up her robe to put it back on, muttering about how she was just getting into character. In the next scene, we see Kwon Byung-woo, Joseph's father, bowing his head to apologize to Yun-ho's mother and telling her that he has no excuses, and that it was his fault for not raising his son better. He promises to cover all medical expenses, mental damages, and any other compensation she might need. But she flat out states that nothing will change with just an apology because this isn't something that can be resolved with words alone. The students nearby are startled to see this scary-looking man bowing his head like this, and Kwon Byung-woo finally lifts his head, questioning why it didn't work, he turns around with a blank face, saying he will be taking his leave. The woman is utterly baffled by his strange behavior. In response, Kwon Byung-woo covers his face with a handkerchief and reveals that he was here to make amends, but since they can't resolve anything through discussion, he will leave because efficiency is key in all matters. He then walks forward towards his car, telling the woman that he also knows other ways to sort out this mess because he's quite the expert in these matters. With those parting words, his car zooms off. He then complains to his manager about how disgustingly stingy and smelly that place was, insisting they tear it all down and build a mixed-use complex instead. The Deadeye Man then asks about Sean, or we can also call him Sean, and asks his manager if they have taken care of that kid. The manager lets him know their people are already en route, and the secretary will ring them once the job's done. Kwon Byung-woo just nods and heads to Songam University Songam Hospital. Inside, we find Joseph all banged up, wrapped in bandages like a mummy. He tells his dad the kid who messed him up was no average Joe, he kept rambling about some 3 engraved principles or something. His dad raises an eyebrow, asking if this is the new trend among kids. Joseph just shakes his head, saying he hasn't a clue. Before Joseph can spill more, his dad cuts him off and gives a cold stare to the woman, humbly requesting the nurse to give them some alone time. Once the lady is out of the way, he slaps his son hard right across his face, just like any typical father. After slapping Joseph's face, Byung-woo lets him have it. What's really grinding his gears isn't just that his son picked a fight, bullied some kids, and caused one to jump out of a window. Nah, what's really bothering him is that Joseph didn't clean up the mess afterward, leaving a trail of evidence behind. He drills into Joseph that the basics of the job are to avoid doing things twice, meaning don't screw up and leave evidence for others to find. Byung-woo tells him to watch his father closely and learn from this chance to fix things, as this is how adults handle things. Meanwhile, Sean is taking a beating from a group of goons sent by Byung-woo. The leader, decked out in gloves, watches as his lackeys drag the injured boy from the ground. With a scowl, he delivers a series of stinging slaps to Sean's face, not stopping until the boy collapses from sheer exhaustion. The glasses-wearing thug, looking down at Sean with a sneer, says, "You might have taken down a few kids, but you're nothing against adults." They grab one of Sean's arms, and the burly lackey yanks it straight, holding it firm. The leader then places his foot on Sean's arm and applies all his weight, leaving the poor kid writhing in agony. Before they leave, they make sure Sean knows this is payback for the humiliation and beating he dealt to their young master, Joseph. They're leaving him alive just so he can stew over his mistakes. As dusk settles in, Sean sits there, snapping his shoulder back with a sneer. He chuckles at how the goons couldn't even tell the difference between a dislocated and a broken arm, despite their big talk about being adults. The beating he received, well, it was nothing compared to the thrashings Aunt Rachel used to dish out. Sean's frustrated that he can't tap into his full strength without orders, but he's relieved knowing Joseph won't be bullying anyone else. As he heads out, grumbling to himself, he runs into Yun-ho's mother. She recognizes him immediately and asks, "What happened to you?" With a warm hello, Sean greets her and is soon invited to dinner. Yun-ho's mother has prepared a feast, urging him to eat his fill. When Sean hears this command to eat, he dives into the food like a wild beast. He is driven by an instinct to comply with the care of someone he now sees as his parent. The mother then gently instructs Sean to drink some water, pointing out that it'll help him digest better. Sean follows her advice, downing the water with a hearty gulp and letting out a satisfied burp afterward. He thanks her for the meal, and she smiles, happy to see him after such a long time. Sean's mood turns serious as he asks about Yun-ho's condition. In response, she assures him that the surgery went smoothly and that Yun-ho is doing fine. She's hopeful for his recovery, even though things are tough right now. Then her strength seems to crumble. Her hand starts to shake, and tears flow freely. She sobs, feeling weak compared to her son and helpless as a mother. Her heartfelt wish spills out of her tongue. She wants to destroy everyone who hurt Yun-ho, especially Joseph's father, and tear them all apart. Well, it looks like Sean has finally found a reason to unleash his powers at full force against those jerks. As the lady turns around to apologize for her sudden outburst, Sean's already long gone. The scene then shifts to Byung-woo's construction company. Inside the building, the father of that piece of poop son raises a toast to celebrate the record profit they've racked up in the third quarter of this year. He's giving a heartfelt thanks to all his employees, saying it's all thanks to them that Byung-woo Construction has come this far. Among the crowd of employees, we spot one of the same hefty guys who had beaten up Sean earlier. Near him stands a waiter who suspiciously looks like Sean. The waiter approaches the man and offers to pour him a drink. As soon as the man says, "Pour some," the waiter smashes the bottle right over this jerk's face. The bottle shatters, leaving the wine and glass scattered through the air. Another one of the goons appears and tries to attack our boy from the back. But Sean is ready. He shoves those glasses he was holding into the guy's hands like he's handing over a pair of gloves. Then, with a brutal swing of his leg, he kicks the jerk right in the face. Next, Sean grabs some forks and knives and hurls them at the guards with deadly precision. They hit their targets perfectly. It doesn't take long for everyone to catch on that something's going down. Before they can do anything, a bunch of the black-suited guys are already out, and people are screaming about a blonde kid who's causing all this mess. The mention of a blonde kid rings a bell for the company director. Meanwhile, Sean is hiding under a table, knife in hand. He zips past everyone, slicing through them like they're nothing more than cucumbers with that tiny knife of his. He's sticking to what he's been taught. A parent's words are absolute. He can't ignore the tears and pleas of the mother who wanted everyone torn apart, along with that father, so he's doing exactly what he's been told. He grabs a tablecloth, and before the ragtag crew can get close, uses it as a distraction. He throws the table right at their faces, crushing them under its weight and leaving them screaming their lungs out. Just then, a knife flies in from behind, but he ducks quickly, and the knife hits one of the black-suited guys in front instead. The one who just threw the dagger seems like the same guy with the black gloves, and he's pretty impressed with Sean's reflexes. He's also surprised to see that the arm he broke is still working. Before he can finish playing around with those gloves, Sean grabs the guy's hand and slaps him hard across the face. He expertly locks the guy's arm and snaps the bone inside, coolly telling him, "That's how you break an arm." As the cocky guy sprawls on the ground, a bullet zips past Sean's face, grazing him closely. The shooter is Byung-woo, standing on the first floor, looking disappointed for missing his shot. Sean quickly raises his hand and calls out that it's tough to hit from that distance unless you're a real pro. Byung-woo curiously asks who this kid is. He remembers that Korean kids these days are into something called crew, so he asks if Sean is part of that too. To which Sean responds that he doesn't know what the heck that crew thing means. But if Byung-woo is asking which crew he belongs to, then he proudly states that he is with the Yunho snack shop. The mention of Yunho snacks rings a bell for the zombie-like dude, who promptly asks if Sean is talking about that smelly alleyway junk food place. With a sneer, the man shoves the gun barrel right between Sean's eyes and asks if the woman had ordered him to kill him. Sean smirks and says he's absolutely wrong because all she did was tell him to tear and crush everyone to pieces. While the zombie is trying to figure out what the heck Sean is saying, my guy moves with lightning speed, knocks the gun away, and gives the guy a solid slap. That one slap was enough to scramble Byung-woo's brain, and with Sean's final punch, the dude hits the ground, his face a bloody mess, nose and mouth bleeding from the impact. Sean makes it clear he's not here to assist anyone, he's just following his parents' absolute commands. With that, he turns to walk away while the guy on the ground keeps ranting about how he should have taken Sean out when he had the chance and regrets not sticking to his own motto of leaving no work unfinished. Sean grabs the gun, aims it up at the chandelier, and tells the guy to stop blabbering about pointless stuff. He fires, and the chandelier starts to fall, crashing down and crushing the man, just as the mother wished for. Sean walks away, shaking his head and muttering how both the father and son are really just the same. We're back in the hospital, where the nurse asks Joseph if he's feeling any better. The arrogant guy just scoffs and asks why he'd be here if he was doing well. The nurse comments that she's heard school violence can be pretty intense these days, but she's never seen anyone as badly hurt as him before. She wonders if the kid who hit him must have been a real expert, though even for high schoolers, this is pretty extreme. As she squats down to pick up her things, we get a glimpse of her giant rear. I ought to know the name of this hospital, if y'all catch my meaning. Wink wink. She then grabs the injection and asks Joseph what he was discussing with his father earlier about some 3 principles. Noticing the weird color of the injection, Joseph questions what the heck she's injecting him with. The nurse then pulls off her mask and reassures him not to worry, saying that as long as she only uses half, he won't die. The nurse turns out to be Rachel in disguise, who was finally here to take our guy, and she starts pressing against his chest, grilling him about those 3 absolute principles he mentioned. The guy gets genuinely scared by her death glare and tells her to just get the hell out. That's when Rachel pulls off her fake hair and stops playing games. She straightforwardly demands he reveal the name of the kid who messed him up like that. We also find out her specialties, which are disguise, infiltration, interrogation, and of course, add a little spice, torture. After Rachel calls the director to report a problem, she arrives at Byung-woo's company and tells him that our boy apparently used his powers. The director is shocked by this news, and Rachel further explains that she rushed to the spot where Sean was last reported, but by the time she got there, he was already gone. The place was a mess, with people badly injured, something only Sean's powers could have caused. The director is confused, saying he has no idea what's going on because, in the history of Dead Mansion, no one has gone against the absolute three principles. The old man walks over to a cupboard, and as he opens it, a whole bunch of books spill out. He remarks that if Sean is ignoring the absolute three principles, it's no ordinary matter anymore. The weapons the Dead Mansion sold off could bypass these principles and target Dead Mansion itself. He instructs Rachel that her mission has changed to investigate Sean first. She must ensure that if Sean is disregarding the principles, she will need to take action, to which Rachel quickly agrees. The director also mentions that if she needs support in Korea, she can contact the White Tiger workforce personnel there. Just then, two men show up right on cue. They're pretty amazed that a single high schooler managed to take them all down. Rachel hangs up, and one of the guys, particularly the fat one, looks a bit freaked out by her appearance and wonders if kids nowadays really dress like that. His buddy explains that she's Russian and that some people are pretty open-minded, adding that even his own wife is open-minded. As soon as Rachel left them, the boys were wondering where their manager was. It turns out that this Manhwa is in the same universe as manager Kim. If you know, you know. The next day, we're back at school, and it looks like Rachel has taken on the fake role of a teacher at the school where Sean is studying. She's here to dig deeper into what Sean's up to, and just thinking about it gets her all worked up. She's excited to see how he's grown up. Back in the day, Sean was her favorite student. He absorbed everything she taught him like a sponge. So she's really looking forward to seeing him again. When she arrives outside the classroom, she spots Sean. He's in the middle of narrating the story of how Joseph was begging for mercy after he beat the crap out of him. Rachel is completely taken aback by his behavior, and she is having a hard time accepting if this vulgar kid really is Sean. Suddenly, a chubby kid sitting behind Sean gets really pissed off and finally wakes up because of Sean's non-stop rambling. They both start getting cocky with each other, and Rachel wonders if they were going to fight one another to see who is the boss between them. She remembers how, at Dead Mansion, they had this annual event where the kids fought to measure their combat power and determine who was on top. It was so cute when they challenged her, and Sean was always the strongest among them. But now, Sean looks like he's getting his butt handed to him by this big guy, making Rachel seriously question his status as the strongest. The chubby kid keeps kicking and thrashing Sean like he's just a sack of potatoes, and Sean just takes the beating head on, begging for mercy. Rachel's face quickly shifts to a blank poker face, watching this once mighty kid get pummeled like a fool. After a bit of observation, Rachel starts to figure out that Sean probably didn't use his powers because he's hiding his true identity. This makes her think he might still be under the control of the three principles, but she's not entirely sure and wants to keep an eye on him. She can see his sharp, sophisticated eyes. The good kids from Dead Mansion should have both physical strength and brains, and Sean always stood out. Even if he's hiding his power, his smarts still shine through. As his former teacher, she's a bit troubled that he can't disguise himself properly and thinks about teaching him again when she gets the chance. But then, she sees that Sean is busy doodling the moment he smacked Joseph with that fire extinguisher. Rachel gets confused. She thought he was focusing on studying with such concentration, but he's just messing around, proud of his artwork. So, she gives him a heavy book slam right on his head, scolding and reminding him that he was still in class. In the bathroom, Rachel sits with her head spinning in confusion. She removes her disguise, thinking for sure that Sean can't possibly be this foolish, and starts to think maybe this is someone else who just looks like him. It's hard for her to accept that he might really be this clueless. She decides to change her plans. It's no longer just about the three principles. Now she needs to figure out if this guy is really codenamed Sean, leaving the toilet disguised as a student this time. After class, Sean's head is throbbing, and he remembers that the teacher usually doesn't hit that hard. Meanwhile, Rachel, now dressed as a student, comes over, thinking that if he wasn't the Sean she knew, then he was going to die by her hands. Then, Sean hears a familiar voice, asking him where he was going. After turning around, he sees Yun-ho's mother standing there. She's relieved to see him, especially since her bags are weighing her down, and she tells him to please carry them for her. Sean quickly proceeds to carry the bags as commanded. Rachel continues to stand close, listening in on their conversation as she wonders who this woman is. When they hit the snack shop, Sean devours his food like a wild animal. The mother tells him to slow down, and he quietly takes her advice. Rachel starts piecing things together. She figures out that Joseph is the one who knocked out this woman's son, but she's still not sure about Sean's connection to them. After seeing him eat like this, she's fuming that Sean is just as vulgar as she suspected and is itching to tear this Sean imposter apart. As soon as Rachel takes a bite of her food, she gets a chill, and her tongue practically hangs out as she shouts about how spicy the food is. She asks for some water after just one bite of the insanely spicy dish. The woman quickly hands over the water and asks if she can't handle the heat. Rachel is stunned, wondering how these folks can torture themselves with such fiery food. She is pretty sure these Koreans are out to assassinate her with this much heat. Sean then tells her to slow down, saying she's being clumsy. That's it, her frustration has hit the roof, and she vows to take this jerk down. Speaking of spice, she remembers Sean couldn't handle it either. As a kid he would hold her hand tightly as he ate spicy food. If this guy is really Sean, he should be struggling with all this heat, just like he did back in Russia. She then notices his trembling hand, thinking he's having a tough time, but instead, he's giving a thumbs up after being asked by Yeonwoo's mother about how the food was. He is also raving about how delicious the food is. The woman is happy and keeps feeding him. Rachel realizes he's actually handling all that spice like a pro. She is confused, wondering why he's chowing down on this fiery food like a fool instead of refusing to eat it. Then, Rachel remembers that Sean helped this woman carry bags with just her one command, and now he's eating without refusing and helping her with everything she asks for, as if he's following her every command. It seems like she's finally pieced it together. He also would not have killed all those people so skillfully without any commands, and she's sure he was ordered to destroy the Byung-woo construction purposefully. The only person who seems likely to give such orders is the woman he's with. After connecting the dots, Rachel decides to test her theory to see if this woman is really the one commanding Sean. She pays the bill for her food, and while the mother turns to grab some spare change, Rachel sees her chance. She grabs a chopstick and throws it toward the woman. Just as she hoped, Sean leaps from his seat, intercepts the chopstick midair, and grabs the woman by her face. A stool nearby tips over as they quickly vanish. When the mother turns around, both of them are gone. When we finally see them, Rachel is using the chopstick again as a weapon, talking about the dead mansion's third principle for good children: where there is a threat to their parents' safety, ignore the principles and resolve the situation. Saying this while blocking Sean's attack at the same time as her chopstick stabbing misses our boy. As Sean grips her hand hard, he questions her about how long she was planning on following him all day, revealing to her that he had known she was Rachel the entire time. Rachel's eyes changed as she smiled widely, turned on by the fact that it was really the Sean she had raised. She was excited to finally meet our boy. Rachel asks why Sean is hanging out with that woman and why he is following her orders like she's his mom. She is sure that there's no way a rundown snack shop owner could be connected to a top kid from Dead Mansion. Sean stays tight-lipped, so Rachel decides to take action. She grabs his hand, launches him into the air, and slams him down to the ground like a sack of potatoes. I can tell the impact is pretty rough, judging by his groans of pain. Rachel then tells him to stop messing around. It's time for him to get back to the orphanage because there's a whole line of clients waiting for him. Suddenly, Sean's mind flashes back to painful memories that had been buried deep. He sees himself standing in the middle of knocked out kids, and it's clear he's the one who left them out cold during their training. There is also a mysterious woman who gave him the name Park, but he can't seem to remember her. In a sudden burst of shock, Sean blurts out and asks Rachel who this woman in his memories is. Rachel is confused by his random question, but before she can respond, Sean smashes his head into her nose, pushes her away, and gets back on his feet. As she wipes the blood from her nose, her fury flares up. She demands to know if he really won't come back without a fight, but before she can make a move, Sean has already run away. He's sprinting across the rooftops, blown away that they sent Rachel after him. The image of the bloodied woman keeps flashing in his mind, and he's determined to figure out who she is, haunting his memories. Back at Dead Mansion, the director is having a full-on meltdown over the news that Sean managed to escape. Rachel apologizes, saying he slipped away while she was momentarily distracted, but she also brings some good news: they've tracked down the old woman who's controlling Sean with the three principles. It turns out she's the one Sean recognizes as his parent. The director is thrown for a loop and asks how an old woman could be perceived as a parent. He asks Rachel if the old lady is intentionally using the three principles, but Rachel admits she can't be sure yet and says more investigation is needed before jumping to conclusions. The director decides it's best to verify things with the old woman before sending more resources after Sean. After a wardrobe change, Rachel steps out of the bathroom in disguise as the old lady, leaving another old woman confused, who could bet her life that she had just seen a young girl enter the restroom earlier. Meanwhile, the director is busy explaining that there are only 2 ways to retrieve a good child from their parents, and we'll learn about the first method soon enough. Back with Yunho's mother, she is taken aback by the appearance of this elegant old lady, Rachel in disguise, who sternly advises her to keep her distance from Sean. Rachel introduces herself as Sean's mother, noting that she's often busy with business trips and hasn't paid much attention to her child. Now she's all dramatic about how it breaks her heart that Sean's been eating such awful spicy food. Yunho's mother suddenly realizes that Sean can't handle spicy food and feels a bit guilty for making him eat it all this time. It's a harsh wake-up call that she's been feeding him things that aren't good for him. Rachel is grinning inside, thrilled that this old hag is finally feeling some guilt. This is exactly the kind of reaction she was hoping for. You see, getting the parent to voluntarily give up custody of the child is the first way to take a child back from the parent, and this is what Rachel is trying to achieve. So she keeps her smooth talk, saying she understands that Sean listens to Yunho's mother. Rachel tells her that when Sean comes back to eat here, she should sternly tell him never to return and to go back home. It's a dirty play on Rachel's part, but it's all part of the plan. If Yunho's mother tells Sean to go home, he'll take it as an order and head straight back to Dead Mansion. Rachel starts to leave, but Yunho's mother surprises everyone by refusing to say what Rachel suggested. Looks like Rachel's plan isn't going as smoothly as she hoped. Yunho's mother speaks up, and it's a gut punch to Rachel's plan. She asks Rachel if she's even paid attention to her own son. She reveals that Sean is always covered in filth and dirt, and whenever she asks him about it, he just always says he fell. At first, she used to think he was just being a rebellious kid, but now it breaks her heart. It's clear to her that Sean needs someone who truly cares for him, unlike this rich woman who's clearly abandoned him. As she cries, she admits that she's come to care about Sean and doesn't want him to end up like Yunho. She's willing to step up and take care of him since there's no one else around. Rachel clearly gets ticked off hearing this and tries to tear into the old woman, but Yunho's mom just bows her head and apologizes, saying she didn't mean to come off as rude. She's determined to keep an eye on Sean no matter what. It seems like Rachel's first plan to snag Sean's ownership didn't go as smoothly as she'd hoped, and she's fuming. As night falls, she calls up the director and spills the beans about the failed attempt. The director seems disappointed to hear this and is clearly running out of patience, so he gives her the green light to proceed with the second method. Rachel, now fully on board with this plan, eagerly agrees and looks forward to putting it into action. With a determined look, she sheds her garments to reveal a more wild side of herself, signaling that things are about to get serious. It turns out that upon the death of the parent, the child reverts to the ownership of Dead Mansion. So her new target is Yunho's mother. The scene shifts to outside a mart where Yunho's mother is seen shopping for groceries for her shop, and we can also see Rachel lurking in the shadows. She waits for the perfect moment, her finger poised over the detonate button of a bomb. When she decides it's time, she presses it, and the explosion rips through the air. The fire alarms blare, and sprinklers kick on, dousing everything in water. But the blast wasn't aimed at Yunho's mom, it was merely a diversion. Rachel's gun comes into view. She takes her aim, and just as she pulls the trigger, Sean swoops in, wielding a pan like a makeshift shield, and the bullet ricochets off his impromptu defense. Sean's face is etched with annoyance, while Rachel appears to be having the time of her life. Sean is amazed to see that the bullet-blocking move he picked up from a game actually worked in real life. He then drops the pan and strides toward Rachel, clearly annoyed by her actions, as if he already knew she would do something like this. But he reminds her that involving guns and bombs in the mix is just too much. Rachel just smirks, her gun still aimed at the mother. Sean reacts quickly and shoves the shelf she was hiding behind, but Rachel quickly bolts away before the shelf crashes over her. He then takes her by surprise and quickly disarms her with just one kick to her hand. But this girl is not messing around. She quickly pulls out a dagger and swings at him, slashing his belly. Blood splatters to the ground, or so it seems. In reality, it was just a tomato ketchup tin Sean was holding that got punctured in the process. Sean tosses the ketchup tin away, making her lose her last weapon. He quickly tries to smash her with his knee, but she ducks and shoves his feet, sending him crashing into the shelves. She then asks him if he seriously thinks he can take his teacher down like this. She says she wanted to bring him back unharmed, but it looks like that's not an option anymore. Meanwhile, the mother is still trying to figure out what's going on, and that's when she spots a little kid stuck in the chaos, crying his eyes out amid all the commotion. He's sobbing for his mom. The woman rushes over, asking if he's hurt. The tearful kid just says he wants to go back to his mom and asks her to help him get out of there. But it turns out this little punk is holding a sharp knife. No surprise if he's one of those specially trained kids here to assist Rachel in assassinating her.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.